Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. So, the Activision-Blizzard earnings call and the job cuts. Yeah, today we're tackling extremely tough news. This involves 800 people, 800 who no longer have jobs. That's many families losing a vital source of income. It is a serious and somber topic. However, my job is to analyze the situation, and unfortunately that does mean that throughout this video there are a few times where I just want to upfront say that yeah, we're kind of going to be entering uncomfortable territory. But still, yeah, we just need to go forward knowing that we are dealing with a lot of human suffering. And I mean, just look at the image conjured up by this tweet and the situation on the ground. It absolutely was a rough scene in Activision-Blizzard yesterday. Okay, let's get into the news. So Activision-Blizzard had their quarterly earnings report. Even though Destiny 2 notably underperformed, it was another record quarter for the company, getting $2.43 billion, up from the $2.08 billion of last year. Now that does seem good, but here's what CEO Bobby Kotick had to say about the matter. While we had record performance in 2018, it did not quite live up to our expectations. Is that true? Well, in some ways it is. While Call of Duty performed very well, other segments of their business did not. They missed the boat on having a holiday season free-to-play battle royale, like what Apex is now. They had Destiny 2 Forsaken underperform, but actually on Destiny, they did go on to say that Destiny would not really have much of a material impact on their quarterly income. Now, as the earnings call progressed, we learned far more about Blizzard Entertainment's titles as well and how they performed. World of Warcraft is said to have had expected post-launch decline, which, I mean, a bit of that's true, but I don't think it should be expected to this degree. Battle for Azeroth is deeply flawed in many regards, and if it had have been a better designed expansion with more content, then I don't think we would have seen that drop off to such a degree. As for other Blizzard titles, well, Hearthstone and Overwatch both seem to have stagnated. Now, overall, they had 15% revenue growth at Blizzard and rather stunningly, operating income growth of 51% year over year. How could that be? Well, if I was to guess, it would be a reduction in expenses. I mean, if revenue went up 15% at Blizzard, but operating income went up 51%, well, that difference probably came from somewhere, and that's likely cost cutting, which we know that they have been doing as set out by the ex-CFO, Amrita Ahuja. As for the other segments of the company, well, Spyro and Crash both performed very well, actually, with Crash actually getting 10 million sales over its lifetime. And then as for King, it seems like they ticked along but had a large tax issue. What's the core takeaway from all this, though? Yes, what Bobby said essentially, they did okay, but they could have done better. Throughout the call, it was clear that they did not believe they were shipping enough games and really weren't shipping enough content for their games. So what have we overall seen here? Record revenues, record profit, and a company not being satisfied, with Kotick saying, we did not execute as well as we hoped to in 2018, and our current outlook for 2019 falls below what is possible in an industry filled with growth opportunities. Basically, he was flat out saying that they feel like the competition are getting ahead of them, or had been. Well, if you look at Apex Legends knocking out Call of Duty Blackout, if you look at Blizzard Entertainment's output being quite low and failing really to engage or to compete well for users' time over things like, say, Fortnite, and you look at Destiny 2 and that sort of mishandling, you can see they have not been able to get a handle on many different opportunities. As an example, if you were to take Call of Duty Blackout, if that had been free to play during calendar Q4 2018, then perhaps its growth would have been far larger, and that would have maybe stunted Apex a bit, and the competition would have been closer. Now, Kotick went on to say that 2019 is going to require a significant change in how they run things, and that's mainly going to be through a prioritization on game development, and that to do this, they would need to cut down on their investment on other things that were not working out as well as streamlining things such as their backroom operations, where they reportedly had quite a lot of job duplication across the organization. And yeah, that's a nice way of saying job cuts. So let's break into the job cuts. These are very serious. One of the core problems that they identified was a lack of development resources. They actually went as far as to say that one of the reasons why Destiny 2 was cut was because it took up dev resources on Activision's side and that they really were in short supply. So overall, the slow pace of content is, to them, a foundational problem in their business, with Kotick actually praising the World of Warcraft model, which somewhat makes sense. I know it has its issues right now, now, but of course WoW was a successful live service before live services were the main thing in the industry. So in light of all this, they are increasing development roles by around 20% across the organization. However, to fund that, they are cutting overall jobs by 8%, and based on our estimates of the company's size, that's 800 people. Now, I believe that's mostly North American, and that it mostly comes from non-dev roles. And I mean, you've got esports people, you've got product people, you've got brand managers. We have Caden on Twitter, like the most communicative WoW community manager is gone, the most active one. A lot of people are gone. Even World of Warcraft's main PR contact is gone, and he had been, on World of Warcraft for not really that much time, but he had been at Activision-Blizzard for over a decade. From what I understand, many QA contractors have been let go, including ones on the Warcraft side, and that really does worry me because World of Warcraft has had significant QA issues for quite some time now. They are also streamlining their back-end operations. They're cutting down on job duplication where it existed, and from what I also hear, a whole bunch of WoW CM people, but the more background people have been gone, and that might actually impact some things that we would have seen. And I mean, yeah, it's rough. That is a lot of people. Now, on the whole, I do agree with the desire to hire on more developers. Blizzard especially have been quite woeful with their quantity of output, and from what I've heard from a few sources, they have big issues there and they need more devs. So that's definitely a problem. Anyone who is playing a Blizzard title right now, like Hearthstone, Overwatch, Warcraft, they could probably tell you that those games feel content light in comparison to where they could be. But the problem is that where they get that money from, they got it from cutting 800 jobs. And that is rough, and it doesn't seem like they had a big willingness to mitigate that 800 number. Given their record profits, it's hard to see why they absolutely needed to cut that many non-development staff in order to fund the development staff hiring. I mean, after all, is the whole point of getting profits not to reinvest them in the future? I mean, it could be the problem. It could be that they just wanted to do it without incurring extra long-term costs so that they could deliver better earnings per share or something like that. And it is one of those times where business just feels cruel and heartless, especially when the executive team are raking in masses of money. And I suppose that's what's challenging. And from my view, what's the right thing to do? It's what Iwata did. Cutting his own salary to help, at best, to help shield employees, but at the very least, to show that he was also facing consequences for the underperformance of the company. Unfortunately, though, it actually does get worse. Those 800 cuts are the ones that we know about. However, in places like France or Versailles, a big hub for their EU operations, the labor laws are a lot stronger. You can't as easily and cheaply lay people off as you can in America, and that means that those staff are going to be facing voluntary redundancies followed by mandatory ones if not enough people decide to leave. And this could lead to more job losses, maybe over 1,000 in total after, on top of the 800. And that, again, is a pretty horrible situation, but it is worth saying that people are getting full severance packages, career aid, and all of that stuff. But still, it is rough, especially because many people see Blizzard as a dream job. Sadly, though, I know that that is also something that Blizzard in the past has exploited, and really it's allowed them to get away with low base pay and unreasonable work conditions because many people treat it as a dream job, and that is a big cultural issue that Blizzard has had for quite some time. What's remarkable to me, though, is the tone of the whole meeting. This really could have been handled better. It really is odd the way that it all comes off. The whole thing was conducted as if consumer press would not be watching and only Wall Street would see it, and that just is not the case. Minor things such as the wording, which I get it just doesn't matter in the broad scheme of things. Ultimately, jobs have been lost, but just the way in which they executed it seemed particularly, heartless, I would say, in how it was delivered, saying, we have record profits, we've delivered another record year, and we're axing 8% of our workforce. Now, what does all this mean for the future of the company? Well, multiple executives said that 2019 would be a transitional year with a low number of frontline releases, with their goal being to make the needed changes to their organization over the year. Basically, they are hiring a ton of developers over 2019 so that they have a solid sort of content development pipeline for 2020 and beyond. Once again, based on what I know from multiple internal things that have been going on at Blizzard, oddly enough, though not for WoW stuff, but from what I know of what's going on inside there, they absolutely do need this. So the increases in team size are good, especially they pointed out an increase in the Diablo team's headcount, citing multiple projects for them, and that of course does include D4. For the people who play Blizzard games, this could be a bit of a double-edged sword. It might help Blizzard recover from their development challenges over the last few years. However, I am, in another way, a bit worried. With World of Warcraft losing multiple people from its community team, I now have three sources on this, actually, that multiple community feedback projects have been scrapped. People have reached out to me, and that's dangerous. That's the sort of, they're projects that if you came to my main channel, you'd care about them. Given how Blizzard's development staff often seem so remarkably out of touch with their players, it really is quite worrying. So, yeah, job cuts in non-development roles, new jobs in development roles, with them saying that they want to, quote, focus on their core franchises. So with that, let's just talk about future predictions. 2019 overall, they gave a pretty conservative outlook, and they were very clear about that. This is likely why you're seeing the job cuts and the company reorganization sort of happening around now, and also that reorganization is going to cost them about 150 million. They said their forecasts are conservative, with their main line being that it's a light year for releases and that Activision-Blizzard is taking the opportunity to just restructure in order to better support core game development. My overall reading the situation is just, 2019 is going to be a quiet year, probably with a historical Call of Duty release to bump up their Q4 revenue, of course, and that will likely, I would imagine, have a season pass-free live service model. Blizzard won't have much of substance. There will be no major releases, bar World of Warcraft patches, and of course Classic and Warcraft 3 Reforged, I imagine. But other than that, well. Now, when on the earnings call, when he was asked about the Overwatch content releases, J. Allen Brack said that the game is a small part of where the franchise could be, and that they basically need more developers to execute on that. Now, personally, I speculate that they've been trying to work on a PvE Overwatch 2 that's a lot larger and more into the lore. I think that's been spurred on by the success of their PvE events, but I don't think they have the resources to develop both of them meaningfully, and I think that has led to both projects being somewhat constricted. Now, they are increasingly, it looks like they're poised for a strong 2020 and 2021, but in a world where people are more than happy to shift their investments over to a faster growing company somewhere else, it's hard to see this being an amazing year for them. So really, I just predict boredom and mild disappointment in the short term, with an eventual rally. For the players, well, really, it's very much the same. For staff, though, it sucks. They're the clear losers here. They clearly hired too fast. They clearly had bad management. They made questionable moves, some questionable decisions that did not pan out. They irresponsibly hired people, and what is the cost of that? Well, it eventually comes down to the human cost. And really, that is most of it. I want to round up some other little tidbits. So expect more mobile for all franchises. That's one thing for sure. Also, Cody did defend buy-to-play games over free-to-play when asked about Apex, which is interesting. He said that the market showed that upfront price AAA games is still a great business model, and that's probably good to hear. At the end of the day, the investors are all probably hyped about the Fortnite and Apex stuff, but I guess for them, they're just thinking, well, we can sell X amount of million of Call of Duties for 50 quid each, which is, fair enough, right? Like, it's the old model. You just buy the game and then you own it. But yeah, really, that is it. Expect more mobile. Don't expect much from Activision-Blizzard throughout 2019. In terms of anything new, in terms of releases, I would expect a large BlizzCon. I think that on the Blizzard side of the business, they will have multiple large announcements. I think Diablo 4 was almost certainly supposed to be announced at the most recent BlizzCon. I actually have a suspicion that another major project was supposed to be announced at that BlizzCon, but was also scrapped based on some rumor mill stuff. So yeah, I'd say expect a big Blizzard for 2020, 2021, and a big BlizzCon for this year, 2019. But past that, it's definitely a quiet time for the company, and ultimately the whole thing has just came at the cost of 800 job losses, which is so many. And the other thing to really bring up here is it kind of reminds me of some of how casualties in World War I happened, and that sounds crazy, but here's what I mean. Back then, people were conscripted based on location. And that would mean that, like, all the people, you could have a certain battle that would go awfully, and a large percentage of, people from a certain town would be gone. Well, in this, we actually, and that kind of magnified the hurt, essentially, rather than just distributing everything out evenly. And when you look at these 800 job losses, yeah, you see dev teams are fine. You see some other teams that are actually, a little bit hit, but are okay. But then you do see, from what I have read and just scanning Twitter and things like that and seeing what the staff are saying, you do just have some departments that have been majorly gutted with near complete job losses, and that, I think that is really quite painful. It's not just a small reorganization. It is a very, very large change in their non-development operations, and that's really rough. So look, there you go. That's my thoughts on this, on the human element, on the business element, and I think on the video game element, which, you know, ultimately the ones that are the worst, that are most worth caring about are the human element and the video game element. Ideally, the business element should be serving those things, but, you know, as you can see, that doesn't always end up being the case. So thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think. Also, yeah, we have a new set. This is all, you know, very, very work in progress. But yeah, any thoughts on that would be great. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.